Hey friends, welcome to another edition of the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting Session. And tonight's going to be a good one. I'm going to rely heavily on all of you though tonight. I'm having a little bit of an allergy spell, I think. The pollen is everywhere around us here in Virginia, and my nose is not picking up the smells as much as they should or much as they would, despite the pollen effect of some sinus allergies. So who is with us this evening who can come to my aid and assist me with at least helping to pick out the aromas in this wine? I gotta say though, it's pretty powerful. I can still smell. It's a pretty overt smell in this wine, so I might not be too far off or too far off this evening as we get started. Welcome, Susan. Hello, and thank you very much for the birthday wish. Yes, I get to spend my birthday doing what I enjoy most, spending time with a group of folks like you and sharing a wine, and particularly sharing the appreciation of wine by delving into its finer details, which we will get to do together tonight. So thank you for that. Jan is with us. The Burses were here in for lunch today. I'm sorry I missed you guys at lunch, but I was working on some things. Alex, hey man, how are you? Love you too, good buddy. Alex is an old friend and former colleague from the Charlie Trotter days, who's doing some really cool stuff now with bonsai trees, which is awesome. Recreating another career. Hell of a bartender, great guy all around. So Alex, thank you for joining us. And Chris and Peggy are here. Thank you so much for joining us now week after week, and thank you for the birthday wishes. This is so nice. Thank you. I really appreciate that. We're doing red tonight. We've got a couple of I think red is next week too. I just was downstairs looking, and then we have a white on June 3rd. So this is a really fascinating wine. It had some aromas that really jumped right out of the glass for me, and it was a Proustian moment. Gave me a moment of reflection. I could not quite place it, and now I think I'm getting it. So we'll get to that in just a second. But Chris Pearman was in a half hour ago getting the wine and is now joining us, which is awesome, as are Trish, Andy, and Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us each week. And the Kestenbaums are here, which is great. Kathy, Susan is noting Deep Purple, whereas Kathy is noting happy birthday to me, and thank you. Summer, hi. Summer and Bob are chiming in. I think they're visiting some family in Tennessee this weekend. Summer, my sister-in-law, and Bob, my father-in-law, so thank you. Kathy, thank you for the birthday wishes. Eric and Wendy are here, and the Sanders are here tonight too. Awesome guys, thank you so much for coming in and earlier this week and picking up some wines, lots of wines, which was great. So we've got Deep Purple, yes. What else do you see? Rob and Kathy, you're joining us too. What do you guys pick up? What does this wine look like to you? Deep Purple was the first descriptor. Yep. You see, do you have a little, Susan, you were the first to note Deep Purple, but all of you, do you see a little bit of a reddish rim? Are you getting kind of a ruby rim and a deep purple in the center, or is it all ruby? It might be the reddish hue coming off the table that I'm looking at this over, and so I'm picking up a little bit of that, but mostly purple, yes, for sure on that. Huh. There was a moment I had mentioned that a flashback kind of that we talked about this last week, how wine has the ability to take you places just by that olfactory sense and how it ties so beautifully to memory. When I was in Burgundy on a tour, we were hosted by a wonderful family who make some wonderful wines in and around Beaune, in the Côte de Beaune, near Pouligny-Montrachet. And the matriarch of the family cooked foie gras for us, but she cooked it in cast irons or in Dutch ovens, in Le Creuset kind of Dutch ovens, that was almost dry in the pan, and she roasted them. And as she opened the pot at the table, this aroma of like almost this fruited quality. She had kind of a compote in the bottom of the pan with the foie gras, so the seared Maillard reaction of the foie gras, this charred liver element, roasted liver element, not charred, roasted, and the fruit, that's what just exploded out of this glass for me. So there's kind of a meaty quality to this wine, as well as a kind of a cooked, almost compote kind of fruit quality. But I'm getting ahead of myself. On the appearance side of things, Robert has a bright ruby rim. And thank you both, Jan and Chris, for your birthday wishes. I appreciate that. So we're getting some of that bright ruby rim, deep purple in the center. It's pretty deep, right? It's not so deep that you can't see through a little bit, but you're not reading the paper through this, right? So Kathy's picking up a nose of black cherry, blackberries, blueberries, black pepper, black olives, some charcuterie notes, sanguine notes, so that meaty note is coming through for you too, that sanguine note, kind of a minerality that's ironish, blood-like, all great descriptors. Black pepper being a descriptor potentially for some Syrah or Shiraz perhaps, by way of the descriptor here. Maybe we're talking about a Shiraz. Cooked cherries for Jan. Yes, I like that very much. There's a brambly quality too, and thank you, Chris. You just hit it, just right on the nose. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the term bramble, bramble kind of refers to fruit on the vine or on the bush. So thorny bramble kind of a fruit where it's there, it's ripening on the wood, but you have the wood smell of the kind of, whether it's bush or vine kind of element that you can pick up. It has really kind of a beautiful fresh fruit element and that woody element. So that's where bramble kind of comes in. Wild element sometimes too. So Jed's also picking up a little bit of smokiness, a big blueberry hit for Robert, excuse me. And yes, Johnny, thank you for noting that. The legs form, they're there, they move pretty quickly. So we might be talking about Syrah, sure, if we're talking about that grape varietal. But we're talking more about a body that's medium plus just by way of appearance, and then the formation of those tiers is kind of coming down. It's that smokiness is coming out more and more too, which Chris is noting. Tobacco too as well. So we could be talking about maybe something Cabernet oriented. Well, and Kathy notes that Rich is singing a tune, Bramble On, and I'm just glad Rich is at home singing it all. I'm glad he's feeling better after he had a little bit of a unscheduled hospital visit this week. Not something anybody wants to do, so I'm delighted he's up and singing. Give my best to Rich, please. Yeah, Chris, that might be beneficial and helpful to have these open a little bit earlier. I like to do it right off the bat so that I'm evaluating it at least the same way everybody else would be. And if you opt to open it earlier, that's not a bad thing. You'll just be a little bit ahead of everybody else. I know the Swanbergs oftentimes do that. Color and nose, Chris is saying take him more to Bordeaux than to Syrah. Yep, that black pepper can certainly be there. So let's dive into this a little bit. The ripeness of some of those smells would be interesting if it's Bordeaux, maybe more of a ripe vintage. Oh, I love that. Peggy smells the sea in it, which is a great indicator perhaps of proximity to something sea-oriented. Could also be sort of a soil type, more mineral, like limestone element soil, chalky soils, something that gives you that element, but I'm picking up on some of that. This does taste a little bit Bordeaux-like, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me not get ahead of myself. What are you tasting? Let's do taste first. So where's the acidity at on this? Where's the tannin on this? Where's the body mouthfeel of this? Is it dry, off dry? What do you get? Yeah. Oh, nice. Yes, I think, Susan, I agree. I like the mouthfeel. It has got a wonderful kind of counterpoint of tannin and the fruit. They're not fully integrated, but they dance well together. They're partners in this wine. Lovely, lovely interplay of how the tannin is present throughout, but not dominant. We have tried other wines where the tannin is just powerful and lingers and almost sucks your mouth dry. This one adds to it beautifully. Some fruit rich. Excuse me, Jan. Thank you. Yes, lower tannins, Chris. Yeah, I think they might be a lower plus medium. Like they're in that range, but they're not. They're not overpowering, as I was saying. Chris, you're noting as dry, medium plus tannin, medium acid. I think we're in the medium tannin realm for sure. Medium acid, tannin, and ABV. So kind of just a moderate across the board. Chris is also noting that there's a little bit of oak in there, or some oak in there. The Sanders are saying that they decanted at 6:30 and the tannins are there, but medium to a little less than medium, so they've kind of softened, dissipated a touch. So those of us who opened early, maybe the tannins have resolved a bit with oxygen. For those of us just opening it like me, I think there's a moderate level of tannin, and we could certainly parse out minus or plus there. So as we've said in the past, when you get that kind of evaluation of a wine where you're medium, you have a lot more options than if you were to say something like it's light or really robust or really heavy tannin. So the world is our oyster at the moment. What are you thinking in terms of potential varietals, potential places that something with moderate, medium acidity, acid, and tannin might provide that's dry? That gives you, we had that briny olive element, which was noted last, pepper, black pepper, fruit notes, ample fruit notes on the palate as much as on the palate, on the nose too, a meatiness, smokiness. Are we talking about a varietal or a blend? Yeah, this is a lovely one. The tannins are building a little bit on the back end for me now. It's opening a touch after the first pour. I share your initial thought, Kathy. She's saying that her first thought was Syrah. And I do too. I mean, I thought that at first. I mean, we had a little bit of a lighter color, and we had all that ample fruit element, the smoke and the pepper. I think one of those things you have to consider is Syrah with that description. Doesn't mean you have to stay there, and doesn't mean it is, but it certainly could be. Chris is saying there's a lot going on here, and therefore probably has a good chance of being a blend. And the other Chris is saying Merlot, and why not add Merlot to a mix, right? That's certainly a possibility. We have dueling Chris's tonight, and Chris Perriman was noting that he was headed more toward Bordeaux than toward Syrah with the nose. So Merlot-ish. Chris, thank you for chiming in, as I was just noting you, with some cab components perhaps, Petit Verdot as well, but not Pomerol. Okay, so Pomerol being on the right bank of Bordeaux, which is where you'd find a very dominant 80-90+% Merlot type wine typically. So not there. Susan Crandall saying Merlot with Cabernet Franc. Okay, so we're kind of in a Bordeaux blend mode, which is neat. How about I throw out two just for something to consider because we said Syrah. What if it was like a Shiraz Cab blend? And we could get that from South Africa perhaps. We could definitely get that from Australia. I'm not... there might be some riper Cabernet Franc in here, but I'm not picking up a whole bunch of Cab Franc, but there certainly could be. Certainly that structured element, some of that reddish fruit into the darker fruit. When you're tasting this, what kind of fruit is it? Is it red or black fruit? Would we have, if it was Cabernet based, would we have more tannin? Or is this enough tannin to be Cabernet and have this color? And then the next question is, if it's not Cabernet, for example, and I'm not saying that it isn't, would we be then dealing with more Merlot with maybe a small amount of Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, something of that sort? No Cabernet Franc at all, maybe Petit Verdot and Merlot. Jan's liking my Syrah Cabernet Sauvignon idea, which autocorrect made into cassava. So my taro root Syrah combination. Thank you, autocorrect. Yeah, it's more black fruit, right? It's darker fruit. And sometimes you'll get plum in with Merlot and a little bit darker fruit. But generally speaking, I think maybe we need that Petit Verdot. We need something richer than just Merlot to achieve this profile. Okay, so Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Bordeaux style blend, Shiraz, Cabernet type blend, and where in the world do we go with those varietals? What must we consider? If someone was asking you, all right, those are the varietals you're considering, where do you find them? Chris is noting that the oak gives some tannins, and Casa La Postal from kind of Chile would give you an element of this, and is chanting cab, cab, cab. So don't move away from Cabernet, he's saying. Where's the alcohol at on this? That can be something that helps you maybe find where we should consider, but going back to the question of where we should be considering, if you're saying a Bordeaux blend, in the name it implies you should be considering Bordeaux, and maybe immediately writing it off or considering why it might be. And then going from there, obviously we grow Cabernet and Bordeaux blends here in Virginia. We certainly have them in California and in Oregon to some extent, but more so into Washington. And then you could go further afield, as Chris was noting, Chile, maybe perhaps even into Argentina. We threw out Shiraz, and we did that, South Africa, and into Australia too. Robert's asking, could this be a Rhone GSM? And the Syrah part, if we're thinking about it being Syrah, we also need to think about it being something from the Rhone. And so therefore it could be a more Syrah dominant part of a blend with Grenache and maybe Mourvedre. You get some of that deep color from the Mourvedre. Maybe we're talking about southern France. And then if you're talking about those varietals, you could find them in Spain too. Does this taste and smell more Old World to you or New World? And thank you, Susan. You're color commentarying my question because we are all over the world. This doesn't necessarily showcase for us a particular place. It has elements that are pretty clear and distinctive to certain varietals, but it has a number of them. So maybe it is, as a result, a blend of quite a few grapes. But it is more international in style, right? And by that, we could be all over the world. So this wine, if you put your flag and argued that this was a blend from South Africa, I think you could probably find an example. You could find an argument for Chile. You could find an argument for Washington, an argument for Australia. All those places I'm mentioning are more New World than Old World, and it seems that Chris is probably agreeing with me too. I think we're headed more New World. I don't know that we would find this expression of fruit, this profile of fruit, from Bordeaux. And I'm not sure, despite it having some dimension and some layers, I don't know that it necessarily shows the Rhone. And it's kind of more gut than I have the ability to tell you concretely in a sort of cerebral way why we would work our way through that. Chris is certainly saying, Chris surely is saying that not American oak, maybe Hungarian or French. And Chris Pearman is noting that it's not necessarily South America, or South Africa probably, excuse me. But Datorian is good, different. Kathy, you're saying Syrah, and predominantly Syrah blend, but not France, not Australia, or US. So where are you placing that? And why? Give us some help in understanding why you would put this is Syrah-based blend. I don't think we've got the meatiness and the black pepper and some of the fruit components and the ripeness of it, but why would you not place that then in Australia? What would take you away from Australia or the US? This wine has been very consistent, hasn't it? Many of the wines we taste at this very point, between 20 minutes and 22 minutes, begins to change dramatically in many cases, and not so much in this case. It still has the tannin kind of profile. The acidity is nice and fresh. The meatiness, smokiness is still there. The fruit is there. It hasn't changed, but that might be just me and my ability to smell at the present moment. Has it changed for you? I'm still getting that foie gras, roasted foie gras note for me. It's monolithic in a good sense. Yeah, it's complete that way. It has a very self-assured experience that it knows what it is and it delivers on what that is. It's not trying to be something more. It's not reaching to a point where it's completely disjointed and certain of the lesser parts of it are left behind while a star part is kind of shining through. It's well made. So Kathy's descriptions, thank you for those. Jan is saying that maybe more Chilean. Yeah, it could be. We could be talking about Chilean Cabernet. And Kathy's noting that per her earlier notes that this doesn't seem particularly French, more New World because of that, and not sweet tobacco element that she gets from Shiraz, although some people got some more smoky tobacco early on. I think Chris Shirley did. So maybe, yes, maybe we're dealing with a Syrah Cabernet blend from Chile, but it wouldn't be, I mean, nothing's prototypical with Tony, picking some really unique and interesting wines. Chris Perriman is also noting too some of Mom's best meatloaf or meatloaf. Anybody want to do their Will Ferrell impression of calling for meatloaf? Chilean Syrah. Chilean Syrah. Interesting. I don't know. I mean, it's possible. And Chris with his PSA announcement, thank you. It's a very good one. Don't eat Brussels sprouts before a wine tasting. And oftentimes probably not during a wine tasting either. Brussels sprouts, as amazing as they are very, very challenging with wine. All right. So we've got Shiraz, Syrah, blend, Cabernet, coming from maybe Chile. There's an acid kind of tannin component here that is a little bit more sinewy, and I use that word occasionally. Like it's just more fine at the finish, stringy at the finish than I think maybe you'd get from Australia. So maybe I like Chile for that reason. Get the coastal influence that Peggy had picked up, that salinity, which also presented itself in a little way of a kind of a briny olive. So and Casa Postal does do a Syrah project, I believe. They have varieties, a number of varieties of Syrah planted on different soil types that they're playing with. So maybe we're talking about a fun kind of Syrah Cabernet blend. Give us some of that tannin, some of that profile. It's in a Bordeaux bottle, playing the game as Chris does. Chris Shirley, I should say. Susan's also agreeing with us there and saying maybe a Chilean Syrah blend. Yep, you can certainly enjoy this. Kathy, I agree. It would present well with something that has a meatiness to it. Like this would be great with sort of barbecue, smoked beef ribs, pork ribs maybe, but and something that's got that smoke on there, a little bit of layers of fat. So less about pulled pork, more about brisket, something along those lines. Something with a little bit of fattiness to have the tannin kind of bond to it, but not so much that it would overpower it. And something that you could put a little bit of a tangy, sweet, tangy, maybe even a tiny bit spicy, but certainly tangy barbecue sauce. And Chris, I don't think I can definitively say that the shrimp and grits are ever a bad call. But from a pairing perspective, I don't know if I would want to drink this with shrimp and grits as a pairing experience. But that's the best part about food and wine. If you enjoy the wine and enjoy the food, they go together. That's how it works. One last kind of taste before we sort of settle into our final conclusions. So Robert is replying to Chris that Brussels sprouts are part of his evening too, and it's also clouding his judgment perhaps, or at least clouding his ability to assess a wine. Oh man, Jan Burst and Bobby hit it, they nailed it. It's barbecue cheddar bacon beef chili. Yep, I think you're in the wheelhouse for this particular wine. You're going to enjoy this very much. So if we're talking about this wine, smokiness, meatiness, charcuterie, brininess, black pepper, black fruit, a wood signature that's present. So we're talking about something that's been aged in some wood, maybe not for a very long period of time, but certainly a while, 6 months, a year. It's not a 24-month aging. It's meant to be consumed early. It shows its tannin in its youth, but it's very pleasant that way. So I'm liking the Chilean Syrah blend. I was probably this close to pulling the trigger on sort of a Shiraz Cabernet blend from something like Coonawarra or McLaren Vale, something like that in Australia. But it's that tannin and acid, the finish. I think if you're coastal Australia or coastal Chile, that's where I would be happiest, I think. So I'm gonna run with the group. I'm gonna go with sort of a Chilean Syrah Cabernet blend, but I will file for the record that I walked away from an Australian blend. So, and Sharon, good evening to you. Hello. How about the age, guys? Is this young? Is this a kind of 1 to 3 year? Is it 2 to 4 years? Is it kind of 3 to 6 year? Is it older? Where do you place the year? I think this kind of runs more on the youthful side. 2 to 4 years? We talking kind of 2019, 2018 Chilean wine? Yeah, maybe 19. Sort of present vintage in the market, 19. Chilean Syrah-based blend. Here we go. Viard L'Assemblage Grand Vin from Chile, 2018. And I'm going to need some help because I don't know the varieties. Someone wants to look this up. This is a cool little wine for sure. 14% alcohol per what was noted by Chris Shirley, I think, earlier on. This is from Casablanca, so from Chile. So we're in good stead, guys. We did a great job. We got a red blend from Chile that's from 2018. So new vintage, new-ish vintage. Anybody have a second to take a peek at if they're listing what the varietals are on this?
Happy birthday.
Oh boy, we're getting We're getting bombed here for a second.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Daddy.
How nice is that?
Happy birthday to you.
Well, everybody gets to celebrate with me this evening, and the girls and Star. Thank you so much. How exciting. What do you smell?
Don't have a lighter.
I'm going to fake blow them
You
out.
want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. All right, what do you smell, girls? Thea is our requisite taster, well, smeller at this point. You smell fruit?
Yes.
What kind of fruit? Is it like apples and pears? Is it lemons and limes?
It
Is
kinda
it
tastes
berries?
Like berries and lemon and lime.
Cool. Do you smell anything earthy? No, you don't have to smell. Do you smell anything meaty?
Yes.
Do you want to smell again?
A little bit meaty? Like roasted meats, maybe. Anything smoky? No?
Yes.
Do you smell chocolate cake?
Yes.
So this is, thank you, Kathy and Johnny. This is Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon and Petite Syrah and Merlot. A fantastic mix of different varieties. So thus the name L'Assemblage, which gives you an assembly or a blend of grapes. I think we did a fantastic job, everybody. And I'm going to evidently blow out candles here with
For
you.
real.
A few of them are not lighted.
Chris Rutten is saying you're the future master sommelier in the family. And Kathy's saying you're very beautiful, which is so true. Thank you, everyone, for that. Ready? It's time.
Yeah.
1, 2. Thank you. Oh,
I have a
wonderful.
candle.
You may have a candle, yes.
I want a candle.
You may have a candle, sure. Thank you, everyone. I'm so happy to have been able to play the wine game with you this evening and have a chocolate cake to eat with it as well. So cheers to you, Star. And girls, thank you for joining me for the finish of this. To everyone who's played along this evening and for all these weeks, it's been a great deal to me, and that's a gift. So thank you. I will see you back here next week. I have a cake to go eat.
We all do.
We all do.